Hi, Emily.
Hi, Jillian.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. I've been
Me
wanting to
too.
do this for a very long time. So thank you for being
Same.
here.
Of course, I'm so excited to be here. I was really looking forward to this.
Let's just dive right in, shall we?
Yeah.
Let's
Yes.
just do this.
Please.
Love and
We're all
sex.
so
I mean, it's what
related.
it's what makes the world go around. That and money.
Exactly.
What I would love to start with is we know how important communication is inside of a relationship. But what about communicating about sex before you're actually in the relationship with the person?
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you were to look at my history, like other than very recent history, I never had a conversation about sex before I had sex with someone. It was literally like, I hope this works out. I hope I don't get fucked over. I hope this is good. I hope I have a good time, and there's no education on how to have that conversation. And I think it does not matter how sex positive a person is. Sex complicates things. It complicates feelings. And sure, and then you get two people. One person is like, yeah, sex is like whatever. And the other person is, sex is everything to me. Sex means that everything is going to change for me. And they don't have a conversation. And then they turn their connection into something sexual. And it really gets messy quickly. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, God. Yes. That
Dating
is
and sex.
all great points. Dating and sex. Well, here's the thing. First off, we don't talk about sex I'm going to say generally. And my mission has always been to let people just know that communication is a lubrication. I've been saying that for 20 years. The more we
I
talk
love
about
that.
sex, the better sex we're going to have. But most of us don't talk about sex when we're in a relationship, when we're out of a relationship, before a relationship, during a relationship, because there's so much fear around it. We don't know what to say. There's shame, all the things. So to answer your specific question, how do we talk about sex before we have sex with somebody is it can be really tricky, but I feel like people have to look at, like, what do you know about yourself sexually? You could even say to somebody on the first date or whatever, like, I have found in my past relationships that I didn't really talk about sex enough. And it's really important to me that I'm with somebody who has a growth mindset around sex. So I'm wondering if you share those values rather than being like, I really like it 3.2 times a week. And I like I like doggy style. Like, we're not talking about that. I'm just saying that the real meat of talking about sex is being able to do it vulnerably, work out, just like you work out everything else in a relationship, different schedules, or when you're going to go to sleep, or the food you're going to eat, or where you're going to take your summer vacation. You also need to kind of strategize around sex. I want to normalize the fact that when you get into a relationship with somebody, sex is just going to be another one of the things that you're going to have to work on because it's going to change. You're going to want it at different times. Your body's going to change. There's going to be different things you want. And so just saying, hopefully sex is on the table and it's something we can talk about.
Right. And
Right?
also, what about like, when I have sex with someone, I have an expectation that we're in a relationship.
Oh, that's huge too. Okay, so listen, this is the other thing. A lot of people are like, everyone's having like one night stands, or I'm just supposed to be like sleeping around. Like, that's not for everybody. So to be able to say, I get really attached. When I have sex with people, it's going to make me feel like I'm going to put this relationship on a pedestal. All of a sudden, I might get prematurely attached, but I realize we don't really know each other yet. So it's best for me to wait till we're intimate until I know until I know you more, or I know that we are committed, or I know that you're not sleeping with anyone else. Not because that's not okay, but my constitution personally, I won't be able to be the most open, most free, most accepted lover if I know that. So these are the conditions that I need. This is my requirement. Tell me about yours. This is how we learn.
You position that. Yes, that's so important because people are like, how do I even, because, especially for women, they have this, God, there's so much conditioning that has told women that, I'm not, this is more specifically in heteronormative situations, but, he's not going to be interested in me, or he's going to lose interest in me if I say I would rather wait. And I always say, well, good. Well, first of all, not the one who's actually interested in you.
Right. Exactly. If they're like, it's conditional on you having sex with me tonight, what a beautiful, beautiful piece of information you just got about this person.
Yeah,
That maybe not your person. Clearly, you're not on the same schedule right now. This person actually isn't listening to you about something that's very important and probably wasn't hard to say. We already can see this person, the history that you're going to have with this person. Like, maybe it's time to not go out with them again. They did you a favor, right? So
Absolutely.
I think that we should stop worrying how we're going to sound and how we're going to come across to somebody, because the opposite of that is you never sharing your feelings and getting into a relationship where you're acquiescing and doing things that you're overriding your own beliefs, and you're already doing that from the beginning. Like, time to move on.
It's time to move on. But I think that leads to a really important topic, which is that I do think that women in general have been very conditioned to be people pleasers and to please, especially when it comes to the bedroom. I think that there's a belief shared by many women that, our job in the bedroom is to be the porn star, to be the pleaser, to perform, and that belief that, I'm supposed to perform because I'm supposed to be perceived a certain way, and really what is the secret to this person's heart is my sex. And so if I am not actually performing at a level, if I'm not, and I see this much more with women who date men, where there's this belief, if I'm not hooking him sexually, if I'm not grabbing, I'm speaking metaphorically, if I'm not really like getting under his skin, and the way that I'm really going to get under his skin in a good way, the way that I'm going to make him obsessed with me is through how I fuck him. And then what happens is that there's that woman or that girl is completely divorced from her own pleasure. Like the amount, you brought up doggy style, the amount of times that a woman has said to me, like, yeah, I don't really like doggy style, but I do it because he likes it. And look, hey, I'm all for like doing certain things to please your partner that you may not be into, but like that's all they do because they think, well, that's what he wants. And I'm like, but what do you want? And it's a
Jillian.
novel idea for a lot of women to not understand how important their pleasure is. And actually, anyone who's sleeping with them is going to be turned on by her being turned on.
Exactly, Jillian. That's everything. That's so true. A lot of us we're pleasers. We have sex performatively based on what we think the man's going to like or what we think our partner is going to be into. Because the marking, what we tell ourselves is the marking of being a great lover and being a great partner and like knocking their socks off in bed, like those Cosmo headlines, is playing a role and doing a performance of what we think they want. And that is exactly how I actually started my career 20 years ago. I was like, I'm done being performative. I'm done faking pleasure, faking orgasms. This just doesn't seem very equitable to me. How is it that my partner's always having a good time ending and I know that they had the best time of their life and I didn't? This just seems like a waste of my time. It's not very efficient. I'm not like this in any other area of my life. So I really went on a journey to figure out what actually feels good to me. What do I like? And that took a lot of time. And I still, listen, I don't know if you ever get reformed people pleaser. Do you ever stop being a people pleaser? I still work on that. Right. Yeah. I think I'm it's always part of your conditioning, but I really check myself because I know exactly what you're saying is that when I have been in my authentic pleasure and I've learned, and that's been my entire journey of even saying, I'm not even going to have sex with anyone else but myself for a while. What actually feels good in my body? What kind of touch do I like? And then I can go back and think about the sex I've had as well and be like, I really required a little bit of making out and conversation, deep conversation. And the house had to be clean. I'm like, what are all the conditions I've needed to be in my best place so I can receive pleasure? And that is something that is available to every woman, every human to think about it. Because I'm telling you all that once you actually know that and you do the work to figure out what I actually like, what feels good to me, you're going to be with partners or you'll attract the partners or the partners you're with are going to fucking be relishing in the fact that they're with a woman who knows her body and what she likes. And I think that we're so worried that like if we don't play that play that role, that those aren't going to be the people for us, but they're gonna abandon us or not going to want to be with us. But there's so much magic in like just showing up fully embodied and in our pleasure, and that is a journey. And it's okay to say, like, even to someone, I realize that a lot of sex I've been having has been more performative, but right now I'm really focusing on what I like. And I found like what I'm learning is that I really love making out. I really love when you massage my back. When we go to dinner and we have these conversations and we talk about feelings and emotions, I find myself getting more turned on. And then I'm more ready for sex. You know what I mean? It's like there's all these layers to it. It's not just the act. I mean, like, it's not, but then we'll be much more aroused and turned on and feel safe with our partners when we feel like we can express what we need. And then there's all the things about touch and slowing down. I mean, most sex goes way too fast for women.
Way too fast. Oh, God.
I always say, like, go 5 times slower. Like, just tell your partner, like, can we just slow everything down? And so those are some of the ways we can get into it. But I feel like get into our own pleasure. And that does start with solo sex, masturbation, taking time to figure out what feels good, but then also really in your relationships or when you're dating, being like, I found myself going to this pattern again. I'm about to react and about to acquiesce into sex, but I'm actually know now that I need to slow down. It's okay to say no. So it's all a practice.
Yeah.
But it's so worthwhile.
So worthwhile. So let's talk a little bit about trauma.
Yeah.
Trauma and the role of sex and, people getting over trauma, people getting over sexual trauma, some shame around their bodies. How does I get a lot of people over the years asking me, like, how do I go into the dating world, or how do I bring this up to a potential partner that I've had some sort of trauma here? How do I actually let go? Because, so much of it is like somatics. It's like, when we're in our head and we're tense, like, we're going to have a very particular kind of experience sexually. When we can actually let go, that's when we're going to have a better sexual experience. And we need safety. And especially for someone who's experienced some sort of sexual trauma, that needs a lot of safety. How would you go about having that conversation?
Yeah. I love that we're talking all about the communication here, because I love just talking about, like, and I know that's so much of what you talk about too on your show. And it's like, it's the same rules apply. It's like, you don't want to talk about sex in the bedroom. You want to talk about it. You don't want to wait till you're having a trauma response or you're feeling something like, you want to wait till you're, and that's how we start to feel safe with someone. You just let them know, I have a history of trauma, that when certain things happen sexually, I get shut down. This is what I've noticed about myself. I need to feel really safe with someone before I have sex. I'm actually in EMDR trauma right now. I'm working on my trauma with different modalities, or I'm really trying to trust my own body when it comes to sex. So you might find that sometimes when I'm having sex, for example, what's great for trauma is saying, I'm going to slow down for a minute. Sometimes we might be going really fast and it might be good, but I want you to know that I might want to just stop for a minute and breathe with you and take a few deep breaths, because then I can really center in my body and then I can come back to the moment of sex. So sometimes that might happen, like just letting them know what you might need. I think that what I love to impart to women so often is that it's okay for us to stop sex. It's okay for us to get going with someone and be like, you know what? I actually would like to kind of slow down, or can we take a pause? I'm going to get a glass of water. And I think where I was raised, or I believed that if I was having sex with somebody, even if I went over to their house and it was under the assumption, I could never change courses. I could never stop the sex from happening. I would be offending them. They would get blue balls, which actually isn't even a seriously tragic thing for men. It's fine. I was afraid that I'd be the one that shut them down, right? So it's like all these things are like, this is just, again, it is very somatic, knowing like, oh, I'm starting to get this response again, or I'm not feeling safe. Can we slow down? So I think, like, I love talking to partners about the therapy I've done, the work I've done, what I've learned about my body, how it works. I mean, I find it like, how else are people going to be great lovers to you? How else can someone be a great partner to you? But also it starts with being a great partner to ourselves. And so if we've had trauma, it doesn't mean your sex life is over and you can never have sex. It just means like now you have really actually more information to work on with yourself and with your partner. But it's really important to do some work around it, like trauma therapy and Even sometimes you can just work it out with a partner who's willing to kind of go slow with you and be present.
Yes.
Really.
Yeah. I think that's huge. You know, when you were saying what you were saying before, it really made me think about foreplay, and that foreplay really like begins well before even the first touch. At least for me, it does.
Yeah.
It's like, it's more energetic. It's like, I don't know. It's like trying to define arousal and attraction and chemistry. It's so hard to pinpoint. It's just like, maybe it's just me watching you like be yourself, you know, in a room that has nothing to do with me. You know, maybe it's like the way you like smiled at me, or the way you like, I don't know, got me a glass of water. Foreplay is...
It's true though. Foreplay is everything. It's not just a suggestion. It's actually a requirement. People are like, oh, foreplay would be a nice to have. No, it's actually a requirement. We need time to get aroused and turned on. And I call them arousal styles. Also in my book, I talk about, in Smart Sex, I talk about, because arousal and desire get very conflated. They're pretty much the same thing. Desire is the want to have sex. And arousal is actually the arousal, like our genitals, like getting an erection or the blood flow. But the desire, so it's really, it's like desire style. So we can use them interchangeably. But thinking about, what is it that I require to be in the mood for sex? So maybe it's, I've had a really great conversation with my partner. We went to dinner, we went to a movie, we did things that made us feel connected. For some people, it's, we did a physical activity together. We went to work out, or we went to hike together. We tried a new thing that really bonded us. We got that same dopamine from feeling connected. And then there's like the physicality of our space. For some people, I have to know that the house is clean, the dishes are away, I finished up my work. Like, I can't just rush into sex. There just needs to be a runway. There's like an arousal runway that needs to happen, a desire. So you can think about, what is your arousal runway? What are all the things? You got to reverse engineer it. So even if people think, like you're saying, Jillian, when do you feel the most attracted to your partner, the most sexual, the most aroused? I mean, if you think about patterning, you could think, what are all the things that were required to get me to this place? And it probably wasn't when your partner just came home from work and grabbed you and said, I'm ready for sex, when you're in the middle of something. So it's like, we get to dictate what that looks like. We know what times of day maybe we're more, like, I know at night, like past 10 o'clock, like I go to bed early. Like I'm not, like I've let my partner know, I'm like Tuesday night, 10 o'clock, probably not going to happen. And it probably won't happen on Wednesday. But like, I'm really good on the weekends. I'm not great in the early mornings, but I might be great in the late afternoon because we work from home, right? So like, there's just, so you're just saving yourself. And then you get to troubleshoot it. You get to be like, okay, now I know that about it. Thank you for telling me that. Because then we get into this cycle with our partners where they're making a bid for sex and we're rejecting them because it's really not our time or we don't feel it. And then it becomes this like, it still is this one mysterious part of our relationship where we're like, I hope I get enough foreplay and I hope that they're in the mood at this right time and the stars will align and we'll both want to have sex and at the same time. That's not reality. We don't just kind of randomly plan like our workouts. Like maybe at 3 o'clock it'll be struck over my head that I should go for a walk right now, or I should go to the gym, or, we plan our meals, we plan everything else. And I know people think that sex is that one area that we shouldn't put too much thought or talk into or planning because it takes away the magic. But that magic is available and exists early on in relationships. That's the honeymoon phase. That's the newness. But that's going to fizzle out. That is just, that's not sustainable. So all of these things you're asking about, like, how do we communicate about it? And how do we not perform? And how do we be in our bodies? Like, this all takes some talking and some time and some thinking about our sex life, not as just this, like, close our eyes and hope for the best, right?
Yeah.
So these are all just such good, like, but we don't know, most of us don't have a lot of experience with it. So even us talking about it is like very new. Like what we're saying here is not the norm, is what I'm saying. No one's like wrong right now. All your friends are having these conversations. Everyone else knows exactly what foreplay looks like. They don't. This is still, even though we've been doing this for 20 years, that there's some stuff we have to, you too for 20 years. There's a lot that we just have to keep learning and reminding ourselves. And we're never done learning. But in the area of sex, for so long, it was very taboo and very shameful, and it still is for many people. But I'm saying, like, what we know now and about, so much more science and research put behind also women's sexuality and men's, these are the areas that are just, we have the data. We just need to know ourselves and know that it's okay. We are completely normal as we are. Everything's acceptable. Just really figure out our own owner's manual, what we actually require to be aroused, turned on, connected, and feel safe. And then we have those conversations with a partner. We look for partners that can accept us as we are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I also think like in long-term partnership, what we tend to think of sex as just like this carnal desire that should overcome us and is of just the body, when really I think it's using our brains too. In other words, like if we're in a story or we're just sort of looking at our partner, like if we're kissing our partner, if we can do something in our brains to convince our nervous system that maybe this is the last time or the first time we're ever going to kiss this person. Like the difference between kissing your long-term partner on just a regular day and then kissing them with the thought of, what if this was the last kiss I ever shared with this person? Mm-hmm. And how just changing your thinking around it can create desire. Mm-hmm. And we get, we can so easily take each other for granted. It's the law of familiarity. Mm-hmm. And so I think, I like to kind of apply mindfulness to the whole relationship thing, and like having that thought, or like even thinking about, remember the first time, that reminiscing about the first time that you met, or the first things. Like those are the things that we actually have to be willing to recruit within ourselves and in our minds to make desire stronger, I think. So
absolutely. I love everything that you're saying here, because it is so true that we, and when you first talked about it, it is all about mindfulness and the presence of it. Because if we can, most of what's keeping us, and especially in long-term relationships, is that we are so in our heads, right? We are worrying about things. We're having sex. We're like, I'm not feeling it. I'm not turned on. We're in the future, right? We're worrying about the future. Yeah. We're in the past. And when you can bring yourself to the present moment, anytime you're having sex, you realize that none of that, everything else, it can't exist, right? You can't exist in fear or, worry or anxiety. And then you really can focus on the thoughts you're having. And I love that reframe of like, what if it's the last time I kissed him? Or I really love this person, is like, just being able to be like, what am I feeling, tasting, smelling, hearing? I always bring in the senses too as another way to invoke mindfulness. Is that a big question I get asked? One of the top ones is, how do I get in the mood? But also, how do I not disassociate during sex? How do I not leave the room? How do I not, all these things, the worry. And it's like, if you can just take like, okay, in this moment, like when you find yourself going to another place, like, what am I seeing? Like, I'm looking in my partner's beautiful eyes. What am I feeling? Like my hands on my partner's, body. What am I, smelling? And I always like this like vanilla candle when I have sex. I'm smelling the candle. So then I know, what am I hearing? My playlist. Like I'm able to surround myself, because when you do that, and you might have to do it a few times, then you are just there with your person in front of them in that moment. And then you can come back to the connection. And that's why breath is also great. I do this with my partner. I'd be like, can we just stop and breathe? Like really, like, and people are like, I could never breathe with my partner. Well, it fucking works.
Oh, and you breathe together and try to breathe together. Yes.
I love breathing together. It completely resets. Talk about like our nervous systems that are more aligned. We're calming. We regulate each other. Then that's Tantra. Like that's when people are like, oh, Tantra sex, I should go have like 10-hour orgasms and do all these things. That's part of it. But the really basic Tantra is looking to each other's eyes and regulating your breathing and breathing together. I mean, that's just such a connection. And then you like kind of sink into a rhythm where then start from there again, start the arousal from there, start the connection from that place. Do it every time. Try that. Like, that's just a way to kind of know that you're both, because if your person's coming on strong or you're coming on strong and they're not there yet, it's really hard to regulate. But just to say, let's warm up. It's like you're stretching before exercise, it's like the warm up.
I can't even tell you how many times I've been in a situation, with even my ex-husband and just partners where like they're feeling so passionate and coming on so strong. And I'm just like, again, I'm just not there. And I just need, need so much more. But I don't know. I never stopped it.
That's it. Because we feel guilty.
I feel guilty, or feel like it's not, I felt like it wasn't the right thing to do. Sometimes I felt like maybe something's wrong with me, that I'm not feeling this right now, or, is it that I don't love this person? I mean, you can get into a real head trip
Jillian,
about
that's it. I love that you just brought that. You just described the exact conditioning, to go back to our first conversation, our first message about performance. It's like, we don't think that we deserve, like, we all think that something's wrong with us. I should be just as turned on when and how my partner is, and to the degree in which they're turned on. I should be always ready to go if I'm a good partner. I should always be having orgasms. I should always be like, and then if I don't, and if I stop this, I'm bad. I'm wrong. I'm not normal. I'm defective. I'm broken. And it's just like, that's just the messaging we get. And it couldn't be it's just not true.
It's not true. And it's not accurate. It's so sad. I think about all the people, and even, who are just having sex that they don't really love. I'm not saying like they're having sex and it's like a horrible experience or a traumatic experience, but they're having sex and they're like, I wish this was different right now. Like, I don't like this position. This isn't turning me on. And so many people are doing that, and they're not speaking up. And it's so, oh God, I'm getting tense just talking about it.
I know, me too.
I know that was feeling.
I know that feeling too. I did it for so many years. It was like, honestly, it wasn't until like my early 30s when I was like, I'm so tired. I've been having sex since I was 17. And it really was this light bulb moment where I was like, okay, so I've had a lot of sex, a lot of partners. I was like dating, 2 years serial monogamous for a while. And I was like, but it's always the same. It's really fun in the beginning and exciting. And then I found myself like, I'm with someone, they're pounding away at me like a jackhammer. I am so bored. I'm waiting for it to be over. This is like, sometimes it's painful because I didn't know about the power of lube, losing a lube every time you have sex. Yeah. And I'm just like, there's no other area of my life where I don't ask for what I want, assert my power. If I'm thirsty, I tell someone I'm thirsty. If I don't like the food, I'd send back the food. But why is sex the one area where I feel jailed? I feel trapped. I'm like, I can't speak up. I'm like, this doesn't feel right. And that's where I started my podcast in 2005, talking to people about their sex lives. That was not the sex.
Is that how it all began?
That's how it all began.
Wow.
I was like literally living in San Francisco. I went back to grad school, got my doctorate and all that a few years in. But at first I was just like, what is good sex to you? How have you having it in a long-term relationship? How don't you have it? Do you masturbate? Like what? And I couldn't find any information. I mean, there really wasn't. People weren't 20 years ago. There was still very much this performative model, and this very much like, and even if I go back and listen, like I think people still didn't really know, right? So I was like, well, there's got to be more information about this, because I am never, and I made that commitment. I said, I'm not going to go into a relationship. And I stopped dating for a while. I stopped having sex for a while. I was like, I don't want to be that again. Like, when you get to a point in your life where you keep doing something so many times, you're like, I'm just freaking done. Like I can't even stand myself right now. Like I can't live another day doing this destructive thing or this thing that doesn't feel good.
That's usually when people change.
Right? That's when they see you, right? They come to you. You're like, I'm at my rock bottom. So I guess I hit my sexual rock bottom. And I was like, this just isn't. And then once you start doing the work, you're like, I can't go backwards. I can't. So, but it's not like I immediately was, but then I had to undo all the things that were harmful, all the people pleasing with sex, all the like faking it till you make it. And then really learning that, oh, my arousal looks like this. I need a lot of foreplay. I probably won't have an orgasm this way, but I know I have it this way. And so this is how I'm going to orgasm. And then letting my partners know this is how I orgasm. And this position doesn't feel good to me. It only does if we have lube, or it only does if I have a pillow, or like. But again, that's just and it's different with every partner too. But if you're in a long-term relationship, how great to say, can we just agree that today's a clean slate? We've been together for 10 years and we probably haven't had a conversation like this before, but maybe we can, and I have a lot of tools too in my book and in my podcast. I talk about how to like create your own sexual history
so many
together.
Tools. Yeah. That's great.
Dude, I got 20 years of tools, but it's like, what do we love? Like, what's the 3 most memorable times you've had sex? Let's each write it down and switch the list. What was happening there? Like, we already have a lot of information, but if we just kind of look at it, we can look at what partner looked good, but felt great to us, what didn't work. And then you troubleshoot it like everything else, but make it like fun, because now you get to discover, like through this work I've discovered, and I know a lot of people I work with, that we discover new erogenous zones, new places that feel good, that like, I love a massage. Even for 5 minutes, it's going to change my entire state. And I might be ready for sex in 5 minutes if you massage me, or if we go away somewhere, or even to get out of the same bedroom, doing the same things over and over again. So like, there's a lot of different ways to hack this, but we just aren't given the tools. So this the pursuit of personal pleasure is a serious mission, because pleasure is our birthright. And the more ways we find to cultivate pleasure in our life, whether it's in the bedroom or everywhere else, we're going to have more of it. Pleasure begets pleasure. And the more we feel good in our bodies, just eating the foods we like, spending time with people we like, dealing with our own traumas, so it's not holding us back, we're going to be much more open to receiving it too. And it's really hard to do it when we still have our own blocks up. Around it.
Oh God, so true. Oh, there's so many different like jumping points. Yeah. I think, just based on all the questions that I get, I think it might be a good idea to talk a little bit about STDs, like herpes, for example, and like how to navigate that. Because I get a lot of questions, a lot of people who write into me saying, I was just diagnosed with this and I feel like my life is over, my sex life is over. How am I going to move on? Common. And and I try to normalize it for them, and just how common it is, and just to talk about it. And yes, there might be people who reject you because of it, but there's still life after it. I'm just wondering if that's something.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, really, that's it. That your life is not over. It's really, really common to have an STD or STI. I mean, a really large percentage. I think it's like, I don't want to say this wrong, probably like 1 in 5, I think. 2 in 5 have herpes.
Is STI the more
STIs.
Politically correct thing to say?
STIs, not STDs, STI. Yeah, STIs. Any STI. Okay. So yeah, it's not STDs anymore, it's STIs. But,
thanks for the education.
But I think it's really important to get tested. It's really important to know if you do have herpes, though. That is one where you can take a daily suppressant. And if you take this daily suppressant, the chances of it being transmissible are way, way less than being with someone who doesn't know they have herpes and you're not using protection, and you could get it that way. So in fact, I think that the people who can actually have the conversations about sexual health with a partner before they have sex, whether it's I've been tested recently or I have herpes and I'm taking a daily suppressant, are much more. I value those partners. Or I feel like those are partners that you want to go towards, because they're people who are actually care about you and your sexual health, and they're being honest, and they want to have the conversation about it. So they're valuing their health and they're valuing your health. So most people aren't having the conversations about testing and STIs. So almost in a way, I'm going, this says a lot about this person's character. This says that this is somebody that has morals, and they're like, that they actually have like some depth around their consequences. And so I just feel that that's a partner that I value, rather than someone who's like, I don't need to get tested, or I'm not going to use a condom.
Oh, yeah.
So I just feel like the more people have these conversations, the more it will become normalized. So I want people to know your life is not over. Be really honest with people. Get as educated as you can about what the STI is and how to treat it and what the protocol is. And then when you go to someone, you say, I want you to know, I got herpes. I've had it for 6 years. I've been on a daily suppressant. I have not had a breakout. Or when I get breakouts, I know when I don't have sex, and this is how I've managed it for the last 4 years. It's like, okay, this person knows their stuff. I'm going to be that. I respect that person. But it's that silence around it and the shame. Again, Jillian, at the end of the day, so much of the reason what's keeping us all from pleasure, mostly, is the I call them the pleasure thieves: stress, trauma, and shame. And though if we can learn to manage those things, I don't think that we ever completely get rid of all the shame and the trauma. We manage it. If we are just mindful of when they pop up, then we can look at, it's the shame that's keeping me from saying this or from doing this, or this trauma. And the more we can just learn to manage, work with those symptoms, I suppose, then we can lean more into having better sex. More pleasure.
Oh, it's so true. And the stress, I mean, I talk about that a lot too. I mean, it is how we are reacting to our lives on a consistent basis will determine the quality of our romantic relationship.
Exactly. How do we manage our stress and anxiety? If we are constantly in a state of stress, when our cortisol is spiked, we
impossible to have sex.
Impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And most of us, and then we numb out, and then we drink too much, or we do something, and then we try to muddle our way through it, but manage your stress and anxiety first, right? It's bleeding into every area of your life. Yeah.
What about different sex drives? And yeah, how do people manage different sex drives? And then I guess the second part of the question is different sex styles. Like, what if someone is like, I like, there to be candles, and I like music to be playing, and I like to slowly get into the mood. Another person is like, just give it to me on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
And that's how I like to do it. And then these people, they find each other, they get together. They're so compatible in so many ways, but they can't seem to find that sexual compatibility.
I mean, the first thing is to first talk about desire styles or desire discrepancy. That's the first thing, mismatched, is that I want to normalize that in every relationship, you're likely going to be mismatched. And I think that would make people feel a lot better, knowing that in every relationship, there is a high desire partner and a low desire partner. And the lower desire partner has the power because they're the gatekeepers to the sex happening.
Always. Yeah.
They're the ones deciding. And that's just who's going to match up. It's very rare that two high desires and two low desires get together. So let me just let everyone know that is just evening the playing field there. You're all okay. And then learning how to, again, it's all about communication. I mean, my mission is for couples to talk about sex like they're talking about the weather, like they're talking about for dinner. Like, so what do you think this week? What's it looking like? Do you think we could maybe Friday night could be a good night for us,
I love
maybe
that.
we could
Schedule
barbecue.
it.
Schedule sex. But I think it's more being intentional about scheduling sex, but it's also being intentional about sex. Like, let's just be intentional that our sex life is something that we're really going to prioritize in the relationship. We're not just going to see when it all happens, when the cards, when the stars align and it all happens. We're actually going to be intentional lovers to each other, and we're going to figure out what works for us. And that would say, like, I know that my regular desire is probably maybe once a week, and you want it 7 days a week. So clearly that's not going to work. Like that, I can't do it 7 days a week. And then you can start thinking about, and then you get into what's the style that works for you. So let's say you're someone who wants to have it on the kitchen table every night, but I just want some, maybe some mutual masturbation. Like, I love laying by my partner. We'll both get off and I think it's redefining sex. So sex, the way we define it right now, most people think of sex as penetration, but for the majority of people with a vulva, vagina, that's not actually the best sex we're going to have. We're not going to have orgasms that way. We're not going to have the most pleasure. And that's because so much of sex has been designed through religion and procreation. But if you decenter on penetration, then there's a lot of sex that I think a lot of women would be likely to have if it was more like oral sex or using your vibrator or
fingers,
some dirty talk, fingers, hands, mouth. So more women are going to have an orgasm with a finger, a mouth, or a toy. And so if we just know that, then maybe that's, part of our sex. So really, we were talking about styles, we're talking about desire. Like, I might be more likely to use my toy a few days a week than actually penetration for maybe. I'm just saying, like, or I might want, so it's really just getting into what kind of things work for you. If I want more of a romance, like hopefully my partner's cool with candles in the kitchen. If they want to throw me down in the kitchen, there's also ways to work together with your desires and what both of your turn-ons are. And so I don't think that it's a deal breaker if your partner's really into something that you're not, as long as you figure out what you're into too. Because then you could figure out a way, it's creative. Like, this is such a beautiful way to co-create a sex life that's meaningful, is if you both are like, this is what I like, these are the ingredients that are important to me, this is important to me, let's kind of create a beautiful sex life together that works for us. So
I love that. And I think there's so many women walking around listening to this episode right now saying, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with me. It's true. I don't like penetration is like the hardest way for me to get off. And I think there's the men who are listening to this who have sex with women are like, oh my God. So
they are.
Like,
they don't.
They're like, I'm not getting her off necessarily by, penetrating her. I got to do something else. This is going to be groundbreaking for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, this is the requirement. Only 20% of women have an orgasm from anything to do with a penis. And let me just say this for the guys listening. This has nothing to do with your penis. You're not a bad lover. You just haven't had the right information because sex education is abysmal. We don't teach it in schools. We're learning through porn and it looks like it's working for everyone on camera. But the actual truth and the data and the science, and what I love is that we're actually studying women's sexual desire right now. We're looking at the clitoris. And even when I was in the process of writing my book, we thought it had 8,000 nerve endings for all these years. It's only been on the map since 1997, but that's just a side note. We found out it has 12,000 nerve endings. You're like, okay, so like we are learning so much. And so all those nerve endings in the clitoris, it's also internal, can be stimulated and played with and touched. And nipples too. Our nipples are highly orgasmic, totally. But usually we stop touching the nipples after the second date when we started penetrating. So it's more like actually sex could be way better than we've already had. Like you think penetration is great. Try like giving your partner incredible pleasure just from your fingers and watching her writhe in ecstasy and having the kind of desire that you thought she might have been having with the penetration, but now you can give it to her in other ways. And guys have so many erogenous zones too all over their bodies that feel good, but they are just kind of limited to the penetration because that is a sure thing for guys. Most guys, it's going to feel great. And we're not taking that off the table for you. In fact, I think a lot of women would be more likely to penetrate if we already got our needs met in other ways. So This is just like an education train, right? We're all just sort of learning about it now. Totally. It's really just not that. We just don't know, right? But totally. Our bodies are these incredible, we are all covered in nerve endings that feel so great when stimulated with a vibration or with touch or with some wetness and sensuality. It's like sensuality is really the key to it, and getting curious about what feels good. And that's when couples will have so much more to play with, when they realize that like our bodies are just this amazing place that we just haven't even started to examine yet. So let's have some fun figuring out what that looks like for our next chapter. Or if you're just dating someone new, let's figure it out together.
Yeah, it's so fun. It can be really fun. Do you think sex is the first thing to go in a relationship when a couple is struggling emotionally with each other?
Sometimes I would say that sex is one of the first things that goes. Kissing actually is the first thing that goes in like all long-term relationships, it seems. But we just stop kissing. And sometimes when we do kiss again, we're like, oh yeah, I really liked kissing. But yeah, I think that sex is when the sex goes in a relationship, it's usually a symptom of resentments that have built up over time, not communicating our needs. Hormones,
anger.
There's a lot anger, repressed anger, not being able to express what we want, having kids. I mean, can we just normalize the fact that when you have a child, your sex life is forever going to be changed, at least for 15 years to 18 years, or the kids at home. It's like, well, we can even just say when they're an infant. Like women are told when they have a baby that they can go home from the hospital and they can have sex again in 6 weeks. For the majority of women, that is not the case. The sex won't look like it did before. And side note, to be honest, it probably wasn't that great before anyway, if I know most women, because it can always get better. I think every woman right now and man is at a point in their life, if they're listening to this, that this could be the first day of the rest of your sex life. Just even listening to this episode right now, because you can always make it, you can always be like, I'm actually going to take it seriously now. I'm actually, just like you do with your mental health. Like you do, I'm going to actually learn about my sexual health. So I do think that sex goes because we don't, it's like once sex we put on the back burner, we'll get back to it. It's really hard to get back to because, again, resentments, anger. Maybe there's some health issues. Maybe our body never bounced back after we had a child and now it feels different, or we have less desire or less sensations. And so that's why I talk about sexual intelligence. I talk about these 5 pillars of sexual intelligence in my book. And it was a way to kind of get people to realize that sex isn't just about the act. So there's 5 pillars. It's communicating about sex, but also your health. Like if you are on a certain medication, that could be why your sex drive is down too, right? I mean, yes, there's the relational. It could be relational and it could be biological, physical, psychological, spiritual. All those things are related to the sex life. And I think we don't know really how to problem solve it or troubleshoot it. So that it just becomes this huge problem in the relationship that we don't know how to solve, but we can start unpacking it by really looking at our bodies, what feels good, talking to our partner about it. But to answer your question, yes, I think that sex goes in most relationships that are not, we don't know how to manage our relationally.
Yeah. And I think it also, like you said, it starts with kissing. And I think it's just like, I think people forget that passion and intimacy just starts with touch, and it doesn't actually have to be like sexual. It's like people who dance together and touch and are affectionate and hold hands, like that's very, very, I think, really, really important. I think that's just as important as feeling safe. It's like that kind of physical touch. Yeah,
absolutely. And Jillian, this is what I was saying earlier, is that when we say like that you mismatched drives, sometimes we think we're craving sex, and maybe that's the penetration, but we're craving touch, a hug, holding hands, being connected to each other, looking to each other's eyes. Like that kind of intimacy can be what we're actually craving when we think it's the sex. It might just be connection.
Oh,
and
yeah,
that would be a way to get connected. Right?
So well
it's not always just about the sex. So the sex goes, but we really are craving. That's the thing. It's like we think that was connection, but no, I just wanted to have a conversation with my partner without the phone.
Right.
I really wanted to leave the house. I really wanted to get away for a night, not talk about the kids or work. And then look, my desire's back, right? So I think connection can be true, deep connection can kind of help fuel the romantic connection again.
Dr. Ruth just died. And I just thought it would be, did she have a strong influence on your work?
She really did. Dr. Ruth had I mean, when I started, I often said that everyone would say to me, oh, you're the next, like Dr. Ruth. But I said I was starting a show. They're like, oh, like Dr. Ruth. Yeah. She was literally the only person out there that was doing this kind of work at the time. So she had a big influence on my work because she was such a pioneer in the space. And she was one of the first people that made sex accessible and entertaining to such a wide range of people. And she was so like unassuming. Like you would think that Dr. Ruth was coming on to give you about to open like a recipe for, something like, oh, there's your grandmother about to give you a recipe for a strudel. And then she'd be like, oh, but really, here's how you, masturbate. And so I think that she really broke through and was able to, so she did have a huge impact in the way that she was able to talk about it. She decided that she was actually a survivor of the Holocaust and decided that she was going to talk about sex every day, morning till night. 24/7, because she really wanted to make sex more talked about and give people education. And so I have that same passion where I'm like, how do we still not know this stuff? Like all I want to do is share this. People like, you're not broken, you're okay. So like, let's talk about it all the time. I'm going to put it in your face. Even if you're uncomfortable, I'm going to say the things that you think I cannot say, the things that you don't want to hear. I know you don't want to hear me talk about sex right now, but the more we do it in a way that I know I can get people to listen, the more pleasurable lives we're going to have. So yeah, she did have an impact on me that way.
Some people have kinks. They have these particular preferences in the bedroom that might be, somewhat unique, and they feel a little bit ashamed or they feel embarrassed to share that with someone. But sometimes when they do, they are going to be met with, I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does that mean that they're not a match? Or could it be deeper? Like, could those kinks be something that could be rooted in trauma? Or is it like anything goes, don't be shameful about anything? This is the tricky thing because people get very judgmental.
It's very tricky. So I think that we don't want to lead with, so I think it's how we approach our kinks in a relationship. And so, I mean, if you're somebody who has a true kink, like I actually, or like if someone's like, I must be tied up every time we have sex and spanked and be wearing a diaper, let's just say.
Yeah.
It's extreme kink. Right. That's what I would need.
We'll do extreme kink. Yeah.
We'll do extreme kink. Like I need these things every single time.
And it's also the every single time that makes it very extreme.
But that's almost more of a fetish. There's a difference between fantasy and fetish. A fetish is a requirement and you were saying kink. So I just want people to know, like, a kink is anything really, well, let's just break this down. Missionary sex. Kink is defined as anything that's not missionary sex. So a kink could be oral sex.
Okay.
A kink could be spanking, right? But then when people think about it, but also people always assume BDSM, you got to be tied up, you got to wear latex every time. So it's a spectrum, right? Just having an honest conversation with your partner about what your kinks are, but then also explaining to them, why it's your kink, like how it makes you feel and what you think it could do for them too. So often if we're just throwing down, I have this requirement during sex, you need to blindfold me and spank me, and this is what you need to do. But our partner's like, well, what's in it for me? So if you have a conversation about, I think it's really why you think it's a turn on, why it's hot for you, what you think your partner will get from it, how it'll make you feel, then these conversations where partners coming together on their kinks, I know would be a lot more successful for both of them, because I just think we don't often provide enough information and we don't know why we like something. But again, that's why it all comes back to our own internal work, understanding ourselves better so we can explain it to a partner. And when we talk about, how things make us feel and how we think it would feel for them, they're more likely to come on board to want to satisfy our needs. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so well said. Thank you for that. So tell us about your book, because I want everyone to run and get your book.
Well, my book is called Smart Sex, How to Boost Your Sex IQ and Own Your Pleasure. And it came out last year, and it's all about I realized that after so long doing this, I have so much, I was writing like tips and tricks, and people always, have so many questions for me, and they always want a quick fix when it comes to sex. And when I was writing, I was like, you know what? Sex is not a quick fix. And in fact, here's how you can be your own best sex expert and your own best sex. I want empower everyone to be their own sex educator, their sex expert. So I came up with the 5 pillars of sexual intelligence. And so anytime you're having a challenge, I don't know why I can't get turned on, or I'm not as wet as I used to be, or I don't know how to get this need met. You can kind of run through these 5 stages and see like, well, what one of these areas can I troubleshoot? And like real quickly, it's embodiment. Am I in my body? So if I'm in my body during sex, or was I leaving the room and disassociating? That might be why I'm having, trouble connecting. And the second one is our health. And that's, do we have traumas? Are we taking medications? Are we moving our bodies, eating good food? All that's going to impact self-acceptance. Totally. Do I accept myself where I'm at today? That's really the confidence piece. How am I okay with myself naked today? Do I accept my experience still today? And then self-knowledge. Do I know what turns me on? Do I know my sexual history? And then the last one is collaboration. And that's how well we communicate with our partners and communicate with ourselves about sex. And so the book is all about that, and lots of all the best tips and tricks for everything you'd ever want to have better sex.
So basically everyone needs to own your book.
Everyone needs to own it. Yes. People love the book.
And they can find it anywhere?
Anywhere. You can find it anywhere. Yes, on my website, and also on my site, sexwithemily.com. I have so many. I actually have a store that I launched last year too, with all of my favorite products and toys that I've been using for 20 years. So they're all like vetted by me. And
wonderful.
We have a lot of stuff we're announcing. So sign up for our mailing list. People love our mailing list. People always say that I give really good email.
Good. I love that. I love that. We'll put all those links in the show notes right after this.
Cool.
Thank you so much for sharing your incredible wisdom and passion with me and with the audience today. I learned a lot. This was even a therapeutic conversation for me, and I think it's going to be like incredible for people listening. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jillian. Thank you for opening up the space to talk about it and for all the incredible work you do. I love watching you and listening to you.
Oh, thanks. The feeling is mutual.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good day. Appreciate you.